I'd like to call the meeting to order. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A moment of silence. Thank you. The listing of matters are those reasonably anticipated by the chair which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by the law. Please note this meeting is being videotaped for cable. So we have one item on our agenda tonight, which is so this is our special meeting to discuss the fiscal 2019 budget. So Dr. Oakley is going to lead us off. Just some notes for all of our meetings. We welcome the public to come to our meetings, and thank you for attending. If you have any questions, we ask that you just wait until the open forum at the end of the meeting to ask your questions, and we will hopefully be able to address all of them. But the purpose of this meeting is so that we can better understand the budget and also get our questions asked with each other. This is even though we were presented the draft of the budget at our last meeting, this is our first opportunity as a group to discuss it. So if we don't have an answer to a question you may have at the end of the meeting, that's because we might not have the answer to your question yet. We're still working through it. And then for the next 2 weeks after this, we will continue to take questions and answer questions ourselves and work on the budget, so that then we can vote on the budget at our next school committee meeting, which is on March 12th, which once we have voted on that budget, that's what we'll present to the FinCom and to the Board of Selectmen moving forward.
Yeah, and just a reminder, those meetings are March 22nd and March 23rd. I forget the times off the top of my head, but the first night, Wednesday, is the selectmen. Is it the selectmen, and then the FinCom the next night? So present those.
The 21st and 22nd, right?
Yep, 21st, the selectmen.
21st and Sunday.
23rd is a Friday.
I have it.
On Friday.
Well,
I have
we've done worse.
Yeah.
The selectmen meeting's at 7:55, and then I have the finance committee meeting at 7:10.
All right. So I'll get started. We're going to start with something first. This is the first run through the budget, and we will go through this budget line by line, and you can ask questions and stuff. But Sarah and I have been working on the budget, putting it together with input from the building principals and department heads. And you know, we've massaged it, we've looked at different things with it. And one of the things that last year, the MASC, who we're working much more closely with this year with our policies, came out with a report kind of trying to quantify the unfunded and underfunded mandates in education. And as we were going through our budget, we looked at how many things in the past several years have been put on schools that either cost additional money or additional man hours and things like that. And it's really just, you know, affecting our budget in certain ways. So I thought I'd take that report and go through, not all of them, or we'd be here for 3 months, but I would, you know, the biggest ones that seem to affect our budget. And I think this is going to give people a better idea of what we're up against. And you know, I believe that the schools are probably the most regulated department in a town. We're very regulated by the DESE, with the state laws, the Ed Reform Acts, the federal laws, and you can tell just by any time you have a presidential election or a senatorial election or anything like that, everyone always brings up education. So it's a very regulated business, and we keep getting a lot of unfunded and underfunded mandates. So I'm just going to take you through some of these. If you have questions, stop me, or at the end of this portion, I'll let you answer questions. So just bear with me while we go through this. So let's start with Chapter 70. Chapter 70 is really an underfunded mandate, and this goes back to 1993, when we know that we have to provide a free and appropriate education to all students through grade 12. And each town, each municipality is partially funded through Chapter 78, which is earmarked for education. For West Bridgewater, our funds are approximately 25% of the school budget. So the other 75%, it's actually, if you look at net school spending, I think it's 28%, but it's about 25%. The rest of the funding for schools has to come from the town. Also, we have grants and we have school choice funds. But many surrounding towns receive between 35 and 75% of their budgets from Chapter 70. So we're pretty low. The proposed state budget right now, the governor's budget, puts us at $3,684,319 for Chapter 70 out of our $14 million budget, okay? So we're about at the 28% mark. All I can tell you is, and we've talked about this year after year, and some of you know more about it because you've been on longer, and some of you don't know anything about it. But you're not alone, because honestly, I think 2 people in the state of Massachusetts understand the Chapter 70 formula. And they've been trying to fix it for years, and the Mass Association of School Superintendents have been trying to fix it. But what I don't understand is, and I'll show you this graph here if you can see, the state links like schools together with their database, and these are schools that have less than 2,000 kids, districts, their household income is about the same, and they're in a 20-mile radius. And if you look at it, West Bridgewater, look at this neat little thing I have. West Bridgewater is the lowest, and we're slightly below Avon, almost the same. I think it's like 1%. But that's the Chapter 70. Look at Carver. So they get, 56, 58% of their budget, so then their townspeople only have to come up with the other 45 or so percent. We're similar towns, similar demographics. There's really no rhyme or reason to it. And when I first became superintendent, I searched and searched and said, can someone tell me why is West Bridgewater? Because they say it's based on your wealth, your property tax wealth and stuff. And they said, honestly, in 1993, when Chapter 70 started, instead of leveling out the playing field and saying everyone's going to start from this point and look at their wealth, they just said wherever you were that fiscal year, that's where you started. No reason why West Bridgewater was low that year, maybe the year before they were high. It's just, it stayed from there. And we got stuck with that. And although Chapter 70 has been increasing a little bit over the past several years, it's not much. It's like a couple 100,000 here and there. So that's a lot to put on the back of taxpayers in a town, especially a small town, but that's what our formula is. And until it gets changed, but people have been trying to change it for 25 years, that's not going to change. I went to the school committee meeting, the selectmen's meeting several weeks ago, and the town administrator did a presentation on where we fall with taxes, and he used the towns and cities on the 24 corridor, so I said, I'll go that too. They're not all similar to us, but if you look at that, again, look at all the different, and West Bridgewater is still one of the lowest for Chapter 70. We now have Walter Timilty as our senator, and I've talked to him about it. It's just, everyone's been working on it, but this is something that people need to know. That's all the state gives us, so that's a lot on the property taxes of West Bridgewater. So, underfunded by a lot. Transportation. By law, we have to bus any student in grades K through 6 that lives more than 2 miles from their attending school. In West Bridgewater, we bus students that are 1.5 miles. The reason for that really is because we're a small community, so we can do the 1.5. But there's no reimbursement for the state to non-regional schools. But if you're a regional school district, like a Bridgewater-Raynham, like a Whitman-Hanson, like a Dayton-Rehoboth, you get approximately 65% of their transportation costs reimbursed. Just single towns don't. So if we were to receive the same reimbursement, we could get up to, $236,000 to fund this. But they don't do that for towns. big cost to our, that's a huge cost actually, and you'll see transportation in the budget to our budget, and we haven't even gotten these kids in school yet, just to get them here. McKinney-Vento, federal law that ensures immediate enrollment and educational stability for homeless children. So this is what people call homeless transportation. We do get some partial reimbursement, but it's not consistent. It's different from year to year. It does not fund 50% of the costs, and it could go down and be cut at any time. But it was investigated by the state, and they said this is truly an unfunded mandate. For the past 3 years, we've spent about $52,000 to transport displaced children to their homes. And a lot of times people go, there's homeless people in West Bridgewater? Well, homeless means you're displaced. So if you get in a situation where you lose your house, or you get evicted from your apartment, or you, for whatever reasons, and you need to go live with someone in another town, by definition, you're homeless, and you have the right. So if you're in West Bridgewater and you can only find a place to live, maybe with a family member or an extended family member in Stoughton, you have the right to stay in West Bridgewater, and we have to pay for that transportation. And it happens the other way around too. So, and this is something that really affects all school budgets, because it can happen at any time during the year. It's very hard to budget for this. So when it first came out, they said, don't worry, we're going to fund it. You're going to get reimbursed 100%. Not even close. That hasn't happened. So the number of homeless students in West Bridgewater, we fluctuate between 6 and 18 on a yearly basis, and it depends. Like I said, you can't budget for that. Special education. You have to provide, in the least restrictive environment, a free and appropriate education to special ed students from age 3 to 22. Individualized ed plans, or IEPs, dictate the appropriate placements and services for each student, and that comes out of a team decision that's putting the IEP together. The most unpredictable, unfunded costs for special ed are outside placements for students whose needs cannot be met within the district. In addition, transportation for these placements must also be covered by the sending district. So if we can't cover a student's needs, if they have severe disabilities and we can't cover them, then we need to find a least restrictive environment from out of our district, and then also transport them. Currently, 11.2% of our students receive special ed services. That's actually low in the state. The state's about 17.
Oh, 17. Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
So it's only 11.2 and the state's 17, so that's good. However, 11.2% of our students are 25% of our entire budget, because the costs are high and we have to do it. Only 1.2% of our population is placed in an out-of-district placement. But this represents approximately $1.1 million of our budget. And it's because when you're placed out, it means you have significant needs. Now, here's where the unfunded comes. The circuit breaker funding is available from the state to supplement the budget for costs above $43,000. So if you have a placement, you send a kid out, and it's a $52,000 placement, for that difference over 43, you can get reimbursed.
It's supposed to be, I believe, 75%, but
Yeah,
right now it's
95%.
65, 62%.
Yeah, so that's not funded fully either. So you get reimbursed, not for the whole thing, but above 43,000. If your out-of-district placement is 41,900, then you don't get any circuit breaker for it, because you're not above that.
That's only for tuition, transportation, and not reimbursement.
Yeah,
Correct.
that's my next, you knew what I was gonna do. In addition, special ed transportation is not reimbursable under circuit breaker. That's, so, you know, it sounds like, oh, we'll give you the circuit breaker stuff, but it's not. That's another thing that I actually, when I met with Senator Timilty, and he said, what's the one thing that we could really do to make sure, and I said, you have to fully fund circuit breaker and work on some type of reimbursement for transportation. It's killing schools everywhere. Another thing is, can't, it's hard to budget for this, you know who's there, but if a kid moves in the middle of the year from anywhere, and they're already placed somewhere out, we pick that cost up in the middle of the year. And some of these costs, these are the out-of-district placements we have right now. And you can see, so we have the annual cost, for one of them is $47,831. We have 4 kids attending there, look at the total cost. Now, one of them is $27,810, but we can't, that's not over the 43. So we go between $27,810 to a placement of $321,370. Medically fragile child that has multiple disabilities, and you can, it's like, well, you couldn't, find a cheaper, whatever. It's like, well, sometimes some places don't take certain kids. I mean, when someone's that severe, that's a 365-day placement. 20, yeah. And that's one of the things that many people in the state, educators, administrators, have gone to our elected officials and said, shouldn't we get help with this? Because a residential placement where it's overnight and all that, and it has medical care in the facility, shouldn't that be maybe the State Department of Mental Health? Why is the town of West Bridgewater paying? Because that's more than just paying for their education. That's the way the law is right now. That's where our elected officials have to help us to get this relief. So, like I said, we have 1.2% of our population, and it's $1.2 million. Those are some of the schools. But when you get hit with a $321,000 placement in the middle of the year, or a kid really crashes and burns, and then you really have to do something, I mean, that's close to 3% of our budget, right? Our total budget. So, and these are unfunded things that we can't control.
And not to stop you, but I do want to comment on this. I think the most important part here is to understand that, not that we don't want to be responsible for these students and making sure they're in the right placement, and I do think we have the right team to decide where these kids go, but then we get the cost, and that's what we're talking about unfunded mandates.
And it's not, and these kids need it, and that, you're right, I agree with you 100%, but.
And I just want to make,
but
we all believe these kids need it. No one.
But we're
here
an educational institution, so shouldn't, through health insurance, through the Department of Mental Health, those things, shouldn't they help support the non-educational costs?
Yeah,
this is on the, and
in
in West Bridgewater, okay, this is different. 75% of our school budget comes from the property taxes in West Bridgewater, right? So if you're in a town that gets 80% circuit breaker, only 20% is coming from, so it's even more on the taxpayers of West Bridgewater than in other towns.
Right. So that's really the part that's unfair, and that we're obviously, as you're talking to, we're fighting for that to be fixed, but the need, we're not fighting the actual need. The need is real. The need is exactly what it says there. It's now, we need the help to pay for it. But also, when you said, like, if our budget goes up by 3% and we've changed nothing, level of service, level nothing.
For one kid or 2 kids.
Right, and that's what we're going to do.
Right.
But it's,
and that's why it's another unfunded or underfunded.
Right.
Now, we can get some of this back through that circuit, but the circuit breaker is underfunded. They didn't. They're not funding it fully. So that's a lot of money. And you have to pay it out and then get it back and apply for it and hope you put it in the right stuff.
Right. Right.
Which is something that's big.
Right, and just the interesting part about it, if the same student lived in, like you said, if the same student lived in Brockton, the state would pay for more of it. They would pay the 80% of the chapter 70. They would pay, and it's, how is that fair? But we have it. We own it.
Right. Here's our special ed increases, and you can see they're put together by in-house services on the bottom, and then out-of-district tuition and transportation, and it's gone up about $1 million from FY13, and some of those costs are not that we have more kids, because like I said, we only have 11.2%, so we're doing a good job not making sure that we're using special education the way we're supposed to. We have kids that are on IEPs, but eventually what we want them to do is to make enough progress that then they don't even have to be on that IEP anymore because they made the progress. So we have low numbers, but we have no control over especially private placements that we put kids in. They can just go up. There's no regulation on that. I sit on the boards of collaboratives, so I have one vote about whether or not tuition comes up, but I'm one person and they have to also balance their budget. So we really have no control over those costs. Transportation, it's something that goes up every year. So so when you look at special ed being 25% of our budget, it can't help it. It goes up that much in a 5-year period. So that's a big one that I think getting your head around it makes a lot of difference. Another out of district is, and you'll hear a lot of superintendents complaining about this lately, it's vocational and agricultural. So agricultural out of district, kids can opt to go if we do not offer it in our district. And we don't offer agricultural programs, even though we're West Bridgewater.
We should.
We don't offer that. So we get several placements per year. There's no reimbursement for agricultural placements or transportation. So they can go, in West Bridgewater you can apply to either Bristol Aggie or Norfolk Aggie. And the tuition for FY18 for us, was it 2 students?
Yep.
For 2 students was $73,873. And they have the right to go. The only time I can say no to somebody applying to one of those schools is if Southeastern Regional offers a similar program. Like if they don't go for something totally agricultural, it's something that can be offered there, then I can say no, you have to go to Southeastern, which is cheaper per kid tuition, but our town pays Southeastern, and I believe last year they paid $578,172 for the Southeastern Regional. And that's another whole story with the formula. And I know that especially our selectmen years ago, especially Selectman Marrera, went after this a lot. He was in the State House, he was working on how can we fix this formula, because we pay about $10,000 per kid. Sharon, who also goes, they were like $3,500 or $4,000 a kid. It's like, okay, who made this formula that no one understands? So he did a lot to fight for it. What he found out at the end, after all his footwork, was in order to change it, every town that's in the Southeastern group would have to vote to change it. Well, who's going to vote to raise it so ours will go down? So it's another unfunded type thing that can't be fixed.
Yeah, and again, that we want to give our kids these opportunities, so that if someone wants to study agricultural, we want them to go. But it should be fair amongst the town.
Fair.
I know we're talking about the budget, but I mean, again,
We're here to educate children. Yes.
Right, and that's one of our big struggles, is we want to give these opportunities and make sure every student is given the best opportunity.
Right, and the only reason I'm going through it's not that I don't want these kids to have these opportunities.
I know you don't. I just want to.
I'm going through it because I think you need to understand, when I get to the budget, why our increase is what our increase is, and we're still only level servicing.
Right. For opportunities that every kid should have if they want them or need it, as in special ed. So it's not, it's not us saying we want to spend, over $35,000 to send them to agricultural school. We want them to have the opportunities that they can, and this is what it costs us to make it happen.
And it's just so much higher than our per pupil expenditure.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's that. Home tutoring. This is another thing that has really picked up lately, but if you have students that, for mental health reasons, they're hospitalized, medical hospitalizations, and the newest one is discipline, is Chapter 222, which is the new law that came out a couple years ago that said that we can no longer Well, we can exclude and expel kids for disciplinary reasons, if they carry a weapon, anything like that. However,
We have to then pay for them?
yes, we have to then pay for their education
Okay.
in an alternative setting, or tutor them in an alternative setting, or give them a virtual, but we are responsible financially. So even if they commit a crime and do that, and we could exclude them because we feel that they're unsafe within our school, we're still responsible for their education. For the past 3 years, the cost for tutoring students at home who could not attend school, not all disciplines, some of them are mental health, and we're getting a lot more mental health kids, school-phobic kids, 30,596. And, you know, so that's just another thing. English language learners, and you've heard about this, and I remember saying several years ago, and I think we had like 1 or 2 kids, and we're like, wow, we have 1 or 2 kids, and we have to hire a part-time person. And I, you know, hired a consultant hourly to help these kids. And I knew things would change. We're right next to an urban center, you know, and so...
we're a welcoming community,
There
which
you
we
go.
don't want to change.
So Massachusetts requires that all students not fluent in English receive ESL services by specially licensed teachers. So we started with a .2, a .4, a .8 teacher, but due to the growth, we have to increase it to 1.0 next year, in this coming year in FY19. In addition, new mandates have come out that all educators who serve these students, now not just these specially licensed students, but every classroom teacher that may have an ELL kid in their class, has to get trained in sheltered English immersion. And we have been paying for the training for this. Teachers need it in order to get relicensed in their regular license. And this is a 45-hour commitment. It's not just teachers, but the administrators that may have ESL kids have to do it. And so far, because this just came out a couple years ago, we've paid $16,500 to get people trained in sheltered English immersion, and we have to train everybody. So, you know, and here's, I just wanted to show you, so our ELLs and FELs are former English learners. Means that they have English, they take the test, and they have English while that they could be out. They don't have to get the constant everyday service anymore, but they do have to be monitored. And they have to be monitored on a regular basis to make sure that they're doing okay in school, that they don't fall back, and all that stuff. So it's still manpower of monitoring and the paperwork. But you can see since FY16, I just want to use this again, since FY16, you know, and our ELLs have gone up. And just so you know, new regulations just came out, and for a person that moves to your country that doesn't speak a stitch of English, of which we got 4 families this year that moved in the middle of the year from Haiti and Puerto Rico, don't speak a stitch of English, 2.5 hours a day each kid needs in English instruction, and then they have to go into the regular classroom and do sheltered English immersion and try to learn subject matter like that. But 2.5 hours a day is what they need when they're a level 1. What happened this year is, so we have a part-time ELL teacher. She didn't have enough time in her schedule for the last 2 families that came in, so we're actually paying a tutor to come in for a couple hours and work with other kids. So
when you,
I have no, this is going to go up.
yeah. When you, so yeah, that's going to go up. But when in the last screen you said it's cost $16,500 for the
Professional development for teachers in the classroom.
Is that just for the professional development, or are we paying subs while these teachers are at the professional development, or are they doing it on their own
I think you just put the
time?
professional development costs in it.
Yeah, that's just professional development. And usually it's outside of class time,
That
these
they're
courses.
Yeah, a lot of
going
times
to
it's outside of class time.
Okay.
Half days, right?
Yeah.
Half days
Yeah.
usually.
Yeah.
I believe.
Okay.
Half days, or they might take it, like I know the administrators took a night course that was offered at Bridgewater. So, and it's not easy, is it? It was challenging.
Okay.
So again, this is something, I just wanted to give you an idea of, look at the increase we've had, and it's going to go up.
Yeah.
And I've seen it in other towns, how much that it's gone up.
Yeah, I mean, relatively speaking, I think we've had lower numbers than
We have.
some surrounding towns.
And the other thing is, if you have, 20 kids that need the direct service, and I have a 1.0, that's still going to be, we have 4 buildings.
Right.
We have to hope that most of them are in the
They're-
same age group, or it's hard
that they
to
can
get
work
one
together,
person over
right.
4 buildings.
Right, exactly.
So, or you could do like maybe 2.5s or something and maneuver them, but. So other mandates, curriculum changes. Now, finally, something that most people think what schools do. Curriculum, teach kids. But recently, we have the Massachusetts frameworks, and they completely revised, revamped, rewrote the Massachusetts frameworks to align with the Common Core a couple years ago. The new science framework came out in 16, math and ELA just in 17, social studies was soon to be released. And they have new curriculum frameworks that are created and we have to implement, which is the social emotional learning and the digital learning, computer science. All these things now have to take time, and the costs associated, we have to rewrite our curriculum. We have supervision of that, assessment of data analysis, because you have now a new we had PARC, now we have a new next gen MCAS, and it's based on this curriculum. So then we have to look at the data, so people need to look at that. We have to purchase new textbooks or online resources and supplies, and when you get a new system, like we went with Envision's Math 2 years ago, teachers need to be trained in all this new stuff. So I'm not saying that things can stay the same forever, but we were aligned with the former curriculum, and if if the state decides, okay, we're going to go with the Common Core and we're going to change and we're going to rip apart our testing system and get brand new tests so that everything's totally different, so you need all new supplies and that's fine, but to do it all at the same time is like a colossal task, and it's going to take us years to do it. We're starting, I would say we probably finished science last summer, we might have a little more, and we're taking it one step at a time. But over the past 3 years, we've spent $268,000 on curriculum changes. Now, it's one of the highest numbers we've seen so far. It makes sense because this is the core of what a school should do. But that's because these things changed. And we can't stay status quo. We are mandated to make these changes, because if we don't make these changes, then we're setting our kids up for failure when they take the MCAS test and other things.
Or whatever test it is.
Yeah, yeah, whatever test it is when they decide. And here's the thing, a lot of this stuff changed. We went to PARC, we went to Next Gen MCAS, and we're going to have a new Commissioner of Education. Will that person say, what, I never agreed with this, let's change it again? Okay, well, we bought all these things.
Quite possible.
And there's no reimbursement for this. Technology, state mandated several years ago that by 2007, all students in grades 3 through 8, and by this coming year coming up, grades 3 through 10, all tests, grades 3 through 10, will be computer-based. So in order to do that, you can see that means that if you test an entire 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, every single person needs to have a computer. And I will tell you that the building project helped us in order to help get this enough computers, but so it wasn't directly maybe for everything out of the school budget, but it's still out of the town's budget because it was the building project. But we figure that in order to get those Chromebooks for all those grades, it was approximately $180,000. Now, to keep this up, because you can't just buy them and last for 10 years, and so we figure that to keep this up will cost about $45,000 per year to maintain the technology. And again, it's great for kids. It's just what the mandate did is it pushed us and pushed other schools to get all the computers now. And I see why they did it, you know, we're Massachusetts, we should probably, I mean, nursing boards are computer, you know, the bar exam, all these things are computer-based. We should have computer-based tests, but I'll tell you, we did it. There's a lot of rural communities out in western part of the state that are having a real hard time getting this done.
I'd say
Some
we're
of them don't
ahead
even
the
have
curve.
broadband yet, you know, at least we have internet connection, so.
And we did actually have to increase the bandwidth too, so that
Yeah.
it wouldn't crash.
The town
During
had
the
to
test.
increase, yeah, that's why we went with Windstream. Another one, professional development. All teachers and other professional staff have to be relicensed every 5 years. That started in '93. And the law says that the district must provide professional development with no cost to the individual employee. Per the collective bargaining agreement, a minimum of $25,000 is allocated to professional development reimbursement for teachers, so this is contractual. We put in $25,000 so that they can take courses, workshops, etc., so that they can get their relicensure. In addition, any of those new mandates that come down, like the new teacher evaluation tool that was mandated, the bullying prevention that was mandated, the social emotional initiatives, the SEI endorsement, school safety training, SBIRT, which is the new screening tool that our school psychs and nurses are getting trained in. That is another mandate that just came down in order to screen kids for potential dependency on drugs and things like that. We're going to have to do 2 grades of probably, I think, 7th grade and 9th grade, we have to do it. So training in that. Restraint training for special education. So, and there's more.
What's SEI endorsement?
SEI is the sheltered English immersion. So all that stuff, we need to train people. So we have to add approximately $45,000 a year additional for professional development. And that's what it's come out to over the past several years. But you can't send teachers into these things and have them do it and say, okay, I mean, bullying prevention, part of the bullying law was that all teachers will be trained. So, okay, we need a new curriculum, you know. So,
They're all good ideas, but how
and
do
you know
pay
what? No
for
one's
it?
saying that any of these mandates aren't really a good idea.
No,
It's just
I know
that
you're not.
all at once, and it's like, but give us some help.
Right.
Mandated to do a teacher mentor program. Again, great idea. All new teachers should have a mentoring induction program. But the state started, it was a 1-year program, then it went to a 2-year program. Now last year they said it's a 3-year program. And you don't have as much mentoring, it weans off a little bit, but you know, because the research finds that within the first 3 years, that's when new teachers tend to leave the profession. So to keep them, they want to keep this mentoring. So it's about $15,000 a year for us with our mentor program. The student management system and educational personnel information management system, known as SIMS and EPUMS. It's really the data collection that needs to be put together all year long, every day. It goes into the state so that they can monitor everything that happens with students. They started EPUM several years ago, so now they can put the student data and the teacher data together, and the testing data, and
Evaluation
teachers'
data.
attendance, and teachers' evaluations, and get a snapshot of every teacher in real time of what's going on, and are they effective, and da-da-da. I mean, it's, but collecting that data and putting all that data together is extremely time-consuming. Many hours required to collect and verify the information, uploaded to DESE and continually review to ensure accuracy. Sarah can probably talk to it even more, because when EPUM started, you had to kind of just, all of a sudden the businessman's like, okay, and how much, I mean, it was a colossal task. So we've started splitting it up and saying, well, we got to add this to you and you and you and you. And a lot of it is the IT director. The Spring Street secretary does all the SIMs, and we needed to, that's why we had to increase hours for the finance clerk, because we need someone that can do this EPUMS, because the business manager is doing everything else. So we figure it's probably $55,000 a year if you look at the man hours, and another $10,000 per year just to keep the data and software that is mandated that we have. They don't tell us what kind, but that we need it, and we can go to any company, but that's what it costs to keep that, so that they can get it in real time as data. And we were just hearing today that the state
Yes.
is probably going to mandate that every district have a
Data
1.0 FTE data specialist, that this is all they do. So,
Great idea.
Yeah.
How are we gonna pay for it, right?
exactly.
And they always
Another-
say, we're going to give you a grant for it, and then, oh, the grant got
Good.
cut.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's the problem. with
Yeah.
it. Okay, so with all that stuff, like I said, I wanted to just give you an idea, because I think it frames a lot of, as we go through this line by line, it's gonna frame for you like what we're up against, and it's like, how do we get level service and not go up too much? But these are things that are from the outside just like pouring on us, and some of them we have to do. And honestly, like the data collection, I know it's important and it's great for the state to have all this data and look at it, but if it's taking away, you know, that's that's a teacher. And if it's taken away from the education of kids, that's kind of sad that
It's
way.
going
when
the
it-
wrong
you
direction.
can't.
Not
Yeah.
the direction we wanna go in.
So with all this, I wanted to show you though that our per pupil expenditure, so I looked at the same towns, okay, and looked at our per pupil expenditure. Wrong one. And you can see, there's West Bridgewater. These are those same towns that have a similar household income and 20-mile radius, da-da-da. So our per pupil expenditure is 21.4% lower than similar districts. We're actually 12th from the lowest per pupil expenditure in the state. So honestly, I think this town gets a lot of bang for the buck, because we do a good job. My fear is, with all the things that are being poured on us and mandated of us, can we keep it up? You know, is it, with this low per pupil, is it going to break and say, okay, you know, look at Hull. Hull's per pupil expenditure. I mean, look how much lower we are than the state for our per pupil expenditure. So although, you know, we spend $12,177 per pupil, it's a lot lower than everyone else. And if you look at, remember I did the 24 corridor, it's the same, we're the lowest per pupil expenditure. So I can see why people in town would say, but we put so much money into the schools. Well, they do, because they pay 75%. But when you look at other towns, our per pupil expenditure is low. And again, my fear is, how long can we keep this up? And we actually put in, you know, I haven't even talked about school choice money yet that we are lucky to have, that we put into the budget. So, any questions about that fun part?
Unfunded mandates, no. I don't have any.
Thank goodness for school choice.
Oh, well, yeah, we need it, or we would.
We need every dime.
Well, because, and I'll tell you, school choice is where we've gotten our technology. And if we didn't have that, you know, we don't have a line item in our budget for purchasing Chromebooks, for purchasing technology. We've taken that out of school choice money. If we also had to add that into our budget and say, hey, the state's making us pay this $180,000, then we'd have to go to the town and say, we have to do this. I mean, school choice has paid for our technology. So, so ready to go over the budget this year? So we'll go line by line. If you have any questions, you can ask them and go from there. So we got a directive from the selectmen December, I believe. Town Administrator Gagné sent out a letter and said the selectmen are asking for us to level fund from FY18 with the exception of including FY19 contractual obligations. Okay, so so anything that's contractual, not just teachers and administrate, you know, not just salaries, but we have bus contracts and we have out-of-district contracts, and we have service contracts. So level fund with that. So what does that look like? Last year, the town appropriated $12,053,405. That was the town appropriation. So they're actually saying that plus all your contractual things. They actually made us fill out a form.
With both of them attached.
Oh, yeah. So they sent us a form, the selectmen, and said, fill out something that has all the contracts that you are responsible for, what it costs, and what the impacts of your budget would be. So if you want a copy of that. Okay, so after going through all our contractual obligations, we found that our contractual obligations for next year are $964,121, which makes the budget 13 million, which is a 7.9% increase, which sounds great, because I'm like, well,
Yeah.
if that's what the selectmen want, then
Done. Do we need
so
to discuss anything else?
I'm thinking that maybe they weren't,
No, that's
they
not what they
didn't
want.
really have their head around how many contracts we actually have, how many contractual obligations we really have. Because although it would be nice to say, oh my God, that's awesome, we can put in a 7.9% budget, I know that it just wouldn't work. And we also have other departments in town, and I'm sure they're going through the same thing. So we looked at that and said, how can we pare that down, and what can we do? So our proposed increase is a $569,659, which would mean that that's a 4.7% increase that I'm proposing tonight. I know that this is just an initial, and we have to go through it. Maybe find ways to, I mean, we pared it down from 7.9, so our total budget with school choice grants and our revolving accounts is an additional $2,284,835. So our total budget next year that we're proposing is $14,907,899, but we're only asking for the $12,623 from the town. That's what's interesting, though, is including in this increase is a one-time retirement payment for 9 employees. We never have 9 retirements in a year, and especially teacher and administrator. I mean, it's a blip, but it's negotiated, but it's a one-time payment, and that adds up because if you look at this, if we had just our operating budget is 2.9% increase.
What's a more reasonable number of retirees for a year?
Oh.
I'm glad you asked. So this is, you can see that this is in a normal year. And you have to look at, I mean, teachers make more money than IAs, so if you have a year like here, it looks like we had a lot, but a lot of them were instructional assistants, so their payout wasn't as much. So it is a blip, and if you look at the cost, you can see that's a big difference. So because that was a lot of instructional assistants, but it truly is a blip. So that's why I'm kind of looking at, can we? I want you to look at it as if we didn't have this, our operating budget increase is 2.9%. So we did pare things down in order to get there. And how did we do that? We did it through attrition, not replacing things that are left. Also, if we'll tell the principals that I know you had a CAGS step 10 teacher. Well, you know what? You're going to have to hire a, first step master's teacher or something lower on the scale to try to save that money. I mean, it would be nice to be able to hire the most experienced person, but we needed to pare it down because I knew I couldn't go in at 7.9%.
So, Dr. Oakley, can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So you said in the beginning of your presentation, you were saying how, just for observation's sakes, that the school budget is the most regulated business in town. So with
I
respect
think from
to
the
that,
state and the feds, yeah.
with respect to that, how does that, the 9 retirements in our school, how does that compare to the town in general? The retirements in
Oh,
the
they're
town as a whole?
Well, our retirements, they're negotiated separately? Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Like,
what
we
does
have
that
9,
mean?
I don't know how many the town has this year. The only one I know of off the top of my head was the fire chief that I know retired, but I don't know, there might be more. But they're all negotiated differently, so like, we're not the same. Like, our retirements, teachers get, and IAs,
25.
25%, they get to buy back 25% of their sick days with a cap of 45 days.
That's not the same for the town employees, though?
No, they're all different, and the majority of them, except the police, I think just changed, right?
The police just changed.
But they get 120 days. Ours only get 45. They can buy back up to 120 days. So if they ever had 9 retirements, I don't know where they would, I can't imagine how much that would cost.
You'd be selling the police station.
The police, I think, just renegotiated and it's 90. And the one thing that they did do in town is if you were hired before 2014, you can buy back the 120 days. If you get hired after 2014, it's cut in half. I think it's down to 90 days. It's not even cut in half. So, I mean, this is a lot of money and stuff, but we're still a lot lower than, teachers are only 45 days. So we're still a lot lower than every other department in what people can buy back. Because our teachers look at this and go, oh, the town is 120 or 90, so we want to go up to that. And we've always been,
Well,
no.
there's no way.
It's just the way it's good. This is as much as you're going to get.
But that's what
But
I'm
they do
saying.
see the town and they want more.
But this blip, though, is, huge off the charts for us
It is.
with 9.
Well, 9 that
So-
mostly are teachers, and that's a lot.
Right, not the IAs, which
Right.
I understand.
So, but we don't usually have this, so, it's
Will you flip back for 1 second, too?
here.
No, one more the other way. Yeah. It's just interesting how FY17 is lower, but it's higher there than, like you were saying.
And that's
about the
because
IAs.
of the,
Teachers versus.
yeah, and it could be how long they worked.
Yeah.
If you're a teacher that's worked for 30 years, you're going to get more than someone that's retiring after 15,
Right.
So,
As well, they should.
and we have, it's one of those years, and how, like, when the perfect storm happens, that happens. So back to this, the proposed increase is the 569, I think, I guess I'm asking you to look at it as, our operating budget's only 2.9, we have this one-time payment. Yes, together it's 4.7, but as you're going through this, I hate to cut our operating budget, because that's level service, okay? We put it together, it's level service, for a one-time payment that will never come back. To cut, a teacher, or to cut a program,
To cut many teachers.
for people to walk out the door. So anyway. So, in here you have, where does the money go? And you can see. And this shows you that, instruction is all the regular ed teachers and services. And then we've got district leadership, 3%, sped expensive, and remember that we said we had 25% sped, but we only have 11.2% of our kids that are in it. So you can see that it's, it's a big chunk of the pie, but there's also, not just expensive, the teachers are in there too. Educational supplies is only 1% of our budget. Transportation, 3%. Student activities, 3%. That's athletics and extracurricular activities. Utilities, 3%. Building maintenance, 6%. A lot of those costs are controlled too, because those are utilities, you know, and if anyone's looked, electricity has gone up lately. So a lot of times when people say, well, you just need to cut your supplies, or don't buy so many number 2 pencils, it's like, it's 1% of our budget. It's not gonna, I mean, it's close to 80% of our budget is people. So you're really cutting a big service when you cut. I mean, there's not a lot of places to cut. So, and I believe that 2.9% is level serviced, so. So if we go line by line, you know, the front page is the overview, but line by line, but I'd like to just, we'll go through line by line, ask me any questions as we go through, or at the end, but, or if you have any suggestions of things that we can move around. I always remind you every year, this is a bottom line budget, and that's good because when you, I'll give you a perfect example, I had to freeze the budget when back in December because we had some unanticipated costs that came in with some services, and so I said, you know what, we've got to freeze the budget so no more teachers can do professional development right now, or we can't hire subs for certain things so that we can pay for this that we have to, or something like that. So thank God we have a bottom line budget for that, but sometimes it can get confusing because of that. For example, when principals put their budgets in, their budget might be a number of different lines. So if we tell them to level fund, you might see that textbook goes down, but you know, technology goes up. It still equals out the same. So I just like to remind you of that because not all budgets are like that. So we can start with you people. First line, 3110. It's not much different than it has been. I mean, the expenses have to be in there because they're for the membership. Working with the Mass Association of School Committees is for the professional development that you're mandated by law to go to as members, and any other types of supplies and materials that are needed. Also the secretary, that who isn't here tonight, but usually is. Any questions on that? That's not one that changes much. Next we have the superintendent's office, and you can see one thing I want to point out is assistant superintendent, and you see it isn't there. And the reason for that is because we went with a director of student services this year instead. So the way that the lines by the audit are set up, we needed to move that into, so you'll see special education increased. This went down, but it was different there. I think someone asked last year, and it's the same thing. It's like the FY operating for the superintendent. It's like, why is it higher than the appropriation request? And that's because
Cut.
because you gave me a pat about, no, because that's vacation buyback that was put in my contract before, or incentives like attendance incentive, and the vacation buyback can't be put in until you know that I have vacation to buy back. So it's hard to put that in if the year's not over yet. Does that make sense?
Well, in reality, it's negotiated with you at the end of the school year,
Yeah.
which is after the fact when we've already accepted the budget for what it stands for. So, yes, it's part of the negotiations we do with you as a committee, and then you tell us what you have left so we can allow you to buy some of that back and or not.
Right, and you're right, because by law, my evaluation doesn't have to be done until June.
Correct.
And if my evaluation, if you come in with the evaluation and say, yeah, you did this, 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 then you get this. So it's hard to do that. And it's actually the same for the principals because they get evaluated at the end of the year. And again, you know, you've been through the new evaluation tool and it's a lot of work. So any questions on that? I mean, a lot of these things, again, you've been through. probably highlight mostly the big changes, but next is the business office. And we've got, so you can see that the school contribution is there. That actually comes out of revolving accounts that help pay for it because they're in charge of some of the programming with that. But we did need to, with the business clerk, increase hours, and I'll tell you why, because of some of that data stuff that we had to get done. So it's not a huge increase, but we did need to increase her hours. She was part-time and she was only working 4 days a week, and now she's gonna have to work 5 days a week. At least that's what we're proposing. And that's really up to you if you think that's worth it. But that's where that is, that's where that increase is, and I know I talked to some of you about it before.
And it's such a high percentage because we're looking for it from the budget instead of from the school contribution.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, when you make changes, the percentages look bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though it's only $4,000, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
right.
269%.
Yeah, because
is
it's
that even a
because we
percentage
pay for
possible?
most of that ourselves. Because
Right.
it's a percentage of the 5. Yeah.
Right.
That's
okay.
why. All right, data processing, again, this is a lot of, I mean, you have to do it. Website licenses, the student information system that we were talking about for the Sims. Health Master is what we need to get the data from nurses and the medical records, so that's all stuff that goes to the state or the Department of Public Health. Windstream is the internet provider. I believe we might be going, we're looking at Comcast.
Yes.
But this is a townwide thing, but we pay a percentage.
Okay.
Yep.
And is
We
that
pay half of
because it's
it,
gonna be a
right?
cost
Or do
Yeah,
we pay
savings
more?
or-
55%.
We pay 55%, the town pays the rest. We don't know yet definitely, but I know Ed Sarro and David Gagdy have been going out to bid for a different provider, hopefully to save money.
And that's actually
But also
through
a
the-
better service.
Yes, and it's through the E-rate, so we actually get a reimbursement from E-rate for our schools.
What's the E-rate? Oh, education rate?
Yes, so we actually get money back, so it helps the town.
Oh, that's good.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's good.
So that we're in that together with the town. But
Because it's an E-rate though, will it go completely on our budget and then they reimburse us?
No, this is
Okay.
55%
Okay, it still
of
goes-
the full, yes.
Okay. We'll inherit the entire bill,
know.
which would be fine if we're
Yes.
saving money. as
yeah,
long
so
as-
these are all just the data processing things. I mean, the SPED software and all that, which has the IEP software, so we can, and that all stuff gets reported to the state too. Really not much of a change, and who knows, maybe if they get a good deal from someone else, that could even be something that could go down.
Yep.
But
It's just- we don't know yet.
why was fiscal 17's actual higher than what we budgeted for?
New programs could have been put in if we had money left over at the end of the year, things that we actually really wanted to get, we probably put in. Aspen, I think we did a little bit of an upgrade so that we could do the lifetime transfer and whatnot. So, and that's usually just a one-time cost to get it done.
Yeah, that's probably, and definitely because in order to do the, because you had Aspen before, but then when you went with the live,
Yeah.
You had to do an extra module.
you had to do an extra module and stuff, but then that's a one-time cost to upgrade it.
And we
So
also
that's when we
increased
went
Health Master
from
too.
Printing report cards, do we print report cards at any grade level now?
How are they
It's all online.
They print
Elementary, but high school is all,
7
they
through
go
12.
in and you get them online.
Okay.
Yeah, and that, Aspen, that's all part of the parent portal and stuff too.
Okay.
Okay, so principals. They're similar to what the other salaries are, not teacher salaries, because that's already negotiated, but principals get evaluated on a yearly basis, and that's a state mandate, because everyone else is on, you walk through and you observe them, but it's a 2-year goal process for teachers and a 2-year evaluation. Administrators by law is a 1-year. So that's why, just like you have to evaluate me yearly, they also have to be. And then you look at their evaluations.
We get to.
You get
We're
to.
privileged to.
You are privileged to
We
evaluate
do.
me, yes. And same thing happens that then based on their performance, we would look at raises and that. So you can't do that until we actually do it. So that's why you see a change. I don't have anything that changed a lot on that. The only thing we are going to change is if you look at the page on the top that says accreditation, we actually got a letter from the accreditation board, and they're starting a whole new process of accreditation. It's a whole.
Gosh, we're sending them all our data. Why do they even have to come over?
We're usually 2019. We were 1959, 1969, 1979. We were always. We're being moved to 2020.
Oh, okay.
Because they want more time with. So we're actually a pilot school for this new process. Woohoo!
Okay.
We were picked. We were chosen as a pilot school for this new process. So that's why we went from, usually we had put in 10,000 because when they come in, when we get closer and they stop visiting and we do things and we have to gather more information, evidence, we need more money for that. But because they pushed us out a year, we went back to the 5,000 and then we'll go back up the next year.
To the 10, or will we do 5 or 5?
I'm hoping it will be just 10.
Yeah.
Who knows with the new process, but the big year is the year they come out because we actually have to put them up in hotels and feed them and do all that fun stuff.
For real?
Yeah.
So it's mandated, so you didn't include that in your unmandated?
Unfunded.
Can we just house them? I have a mattress. I have a blow-up mattress. I'm just saying.
If they want. I'm not thinking they're going to want to live with the school committee chair for 3 days,
maybe
but.
Not.
Okay.
It's crazy though.
If no more questions, that was pretty. Okay, so the next page are teachers, librarians, teaching services. You can see that it's all described up there, but one thing I want to draw your attention to is the school contribution. That's school choice money. And I always go back to the story. It seems like, for me, it was yesterday, but it was about 12 years ago now. When we first started our school choice program, Jim, you were around.
12 years ago.
When we first started our school choice program, we didn't really understand a lot about how it would be audited and stuff like that. So it was, let's put school choice into this, and let's put, as long as it was for direct instruction, it had to be instructional things. You couldn't put it for repaving the, sidewalk or something. So it was a smattering here, a smattering there. After the first year, because we get audited, financial audit every fall, right? When the auditors came in, they said, okay, this is a nightmare to see where it is here and here. What we recommend is you put it all into teachers, then it's all in one place. It will be easier to audit, it will be cleaner financially. So that's why school choice money gets put here, because it was a recommendation from the state auditors. So if we lost school choice money, it doesn't mean that, okay, well, we just cut all of our high school teachers and don't have school anymore. We would then say, all right, we got to cut it from somewhere else, or whatever. But that's for auditing purposes, and I like to say that every year because sometimes people will look at it and say, oh my God, what happens if you don't have it? So that's why. And teachers are in the 3rd year of their negotiated contract. They actually got the same raise that the town got for 3 years, and this last year is 2.5%. Well, the step 16 added, but we went with the same. The town is really kind of a year ahead of us on negotiations, and then so the teachers, I don't know if that's good or bad, but when they see what the town gets, they want the same thing. So, and the FTEs you can see are the same. So again, we're level servicing. Any questions on that page? It just has a lot more information on it. Okay. Professional development. So this is, we had to increase the special ed. It doesn't seem like a lot, but we never had to have special ed separately because we had a grant, a federal grant called the 274 grant, but it got cut this past year. There's talk, I just went to the National Superintendent's Conference a week ago, and there's talk about Title I being cut, Title IIA, which we use a lot for curriculum, and won't devastate us as much because we don't fund, we do, I mean, it will that curriculum and stuff, but there are a number of schools that use the Title IIA grant to actually fund teachers. And that would be devastating if it gets cut. They're telling us it's at least going to get cut 50%. Title I, we use all that Title I services from Spring Street School up through the Howard School, and there are Title I remedial, you know, reading and math, and they're saying that could be cut in half. So we don't know yet because those are federal grants, but you can see what they're doing fighting at the federal level with the budget. And you know, the difference, one thing about Massachusetts is that by statute we have to balance our budget. Massachusetts has to have a balanced budget. That's tough, there's a lot of fights about it, but at least they have to balance their budget by the new fiscal year. The feds don't, and that's why we keep going through these possible shutdowns, and other states don't always have that. So you go into another year and you haven't balanced the previous budget. So although it's tough for our legislators to do it, it's better because then when they balance the budget, you know what you're telling, you know what you're getting, and you can actually do your own budgets. So that's where we are with that.
So we're lucky, is what you're telling us.
I just think it makes sense. I don't think it was ever a good, I don't know, I mean, maybe I don't know enough about it at the federal level, but I don't see how it's ever a good idea to say that you can start a new fiscal year without a balanced budget.
Right. No, I agree.
Because then you're spending borrowed money that then what happens if you don't have that money when it gets fixed in September or October? That makes no sense.
You're always looking backwards.
Then you're devastated. Well, then you go into budget deficit, like the big deficit we have.
Right.
So I think that's one good thing I think about that financially about the state of Massachusetts. So here's a case of, you're going to see that most of these textbooks have gone down. Well, because we're using fewer and fewer textbooks and we're doing more and more online services because we're a one-to-one environment. So although you can see that it's gone down a little bit, and it's actually gone down a lot from FY17, it's slowly going down every year, and I anticipate it's going to go down more and more. Doesn't mean we save money because the technology on the next page goes up because we're using digital resources. So that's the bottom line that we have with the principals. So that's about the same. Guidance and testing. These are the high school guidance counselors and secretary, the supplies. We don't have guidance counselors at the elementary. We have school psychologists. They're in a different line. Sometimes, I know last year someone had asked me, well, where are the, guidance counselors at the elementary? We have school psychologists, not guidance counselors. We also have a school psychologist at the high school, but that's what we have. We did have a high school counselor at Howard years ago, and opted that when he retired to go with the school psychologist because they can test and they can do more stuff. So, but they're just in a different line. This is the ESL that I said we needed to increase. And I mean, I think I've explained why the numbers have gone up. I don't know what that's going to look like. I hope we can cover all the schools with one person. Like I said, it might be a situation where we might have to say, we got to do a 0.5. I could come back to you in the middle of the year next year and say, we just got you know, 4 new families from Puerto Rico, and we need to move some money from somewhere else to hire someone to work with these kids, but we have to do it. But I think, was it Worcester Public Schools? Worcester Public Schools got close to 300 kids from Puerto Rico, families and stuff, after the hurricane. I can't even imagine how financially that, I don't know what you do with that.
Well, how about just, I mean, where do they sit? You wouldn't have a chair
Yeah,
for them. I mean,
but it's,
don't even talk
it's,
about
it's
right?
crazy. So,
Yeah,
I mean, for us to say we got 2 families,
Right, we had chairs.
I mean, it's a lot percentage-wise for us, but
Right?
it's just, you know, it's big, so.
Not to mention you want them to
Yeah.
be successful once they get here.
Right.
So now we have new students.
But that hurricane,
That's
that
means
whole
displaced a lot
area
of people.
really was, this hurricane season was devastating.
Yeah.
And it has ripple effects that sometimes we don't think of. Next, we have nursing health services, and you can see there's a couple things I want to point out. The school contribution isn't school choice in this, it's a Department of Public Health grant that we apply for every year. And so this pays for part of a nurse. And then if you go down to the high school nurse, you can see that there's a decrease because a high school nurse is retiring. Mary's retiring. You remember that she was going to retire several years
Yeah.
ago, and then the way that her retirement was set up, the MTRS kind of messed it up, and she had to come back and work a couple more years. And we were glad to have her. We were glad to have her because it was a good, we were moving into this new building, and she got to
Yeah.
put it together. And I mean, if she worked another 20 years, I'd be psyched. She's awesome. But she's been, gosh, in the district over 30 years, I think, and she's top step, so we can go down a little bit on that. So that's why there's that. We'll be hiring someone new. Next we have, okay, so this is the transportation. This is where I talked about the McKinney-Vento, which is the homeless transportation. And we have increased that because if you see that FY17 was 5,800.
Yep.
But then last year, we had more. Remember I said it could fluctuate between 6 and 18, and we hadn't budgeted for it, so we had to, I think we froze the budget last year.
We did.
And so, where are we up to right now, you think?
I think it's 12,000 last time I looked that we've spent for this year already.
But we already know that we have kids in the pipeline, so we,
I got a new one today, actually.
yeah, we'll figure we'll go to, yeah, we did. Someone
Yep.
just came in from Easton or something, and they're homeless, and
Yep.
we have to cost share with them to do that. So,
And it can vary $40 a day to transport, you know, one person, so it adds up.
yeah, that's the other thing that's tough. We then have to get transportation, so it's not always like, if someone has to go from here to Stoughton, then we have to, like, get a cab company and send them to, I mean, that's like, this, what's the most absurd one? Like, we've had like $100 a day go 2
Yeah.
towns away.
Yeah.
And we've called everywhere, and we've looked everywhere, and that's the best we can get. And they know that you have to pay it,
Right.
Right.
so it's, and then buses. This is our regular ed transportation. Those are those buses that you see going around town. We went, if you look at FY17 actual, and it looks like a lot more, which it is. Last year, we had to add a 6th bus. Now, I just want to say, on the record, that adding the 6th bus has helped immensely. I've heard that online, people are saying, bus 6 bus, has nothing to do with adding the 6th bus. It has to do with, the bus driver wasn't working out. They ended up having to fire their bus driver for that extra bus. It wasn't even the extra bus, just fire a
Yeah.
bus driver, and then put an interim bus driver in, so there's another person that has to learn the route. And actually, today was the first day of the permanent new bus driver that they just hired. And She was a little late for Spring Street, but the others were okay. So,
There's a learning
but,
curve.
but adding that bus, and again, we did not add the bus because we have more kids. We added the bus because West Bridgewater is spreading out. Because
We had
when
a problem.
and we've had 4 buses and in bus number 5, the small one, for, well,
I've been here 10 years.
Bill Lucini told me from the beginning of time when he was in school. Like, we've had it forever. But when, like, we talked a bit, he's like, now you've got new homes down Walnut Street spreading out there, Scotland Street that way. I mean, the town has just spread out. Dividing it up by those 4 main big buses doesn't work, time-wise. It takes too long to get all the way down to the Brockton line, all the way down to the Bridgewater line. So adding that 5th bus and dividing it by 5 made sense.
Yeah.
So as much as I know people are saying, oh, bus 6 again was late, that was a different, I mean, adding that 5th bus, yes, it cost us $70,000 to add a bus. That's a lot of money, another unfunded thing that we had to do, but
Yeah.
the town's
Well,
getting bigger.
I mean, anyone who's dropped off a child or picked up a child at one of our elementary schools or even anywhere will know that it's crowded. And I think one of the reasons going back a couple of years that so many people pick up and drop off their students was because of the timing of the bus. And so, yes, it might have cost us $70,000 to add an additional bus. But, I mean, we've had discussions before about building roads at the back of, you know, one of a building and how can we reformat the parking lots, and the frogs were a problem at one of our buildings. And can you imagine what it would cost to move frogs? I don't know. It was, you know, it wasn't a
Probably a
possibility.
lot.
Probably more than 70 grand, and we weren't even allowed to do it.
Can't move the green ones,
Yeah, that's it, and that's what was there. So.
or the green salamanders.
Right, and part of, I do think the lines are still long at drop off and pick up, and
They
I
are.
think that's something that I'm hoping will graduate out when people start believing in the buses again, because they're, you know, it's
Well, I've
hard.
already had, I mean, a ton of people
Yeah.
have said that huge difference with
Yeah.
the extra bus.
But it's-
And I
it's a
think it'll even
good
get better
investment.
next year because we saw the route, like, basically what happened was they took those 4 routes and they put a 5th bus in instead of, but
Reworking
they,
all
because
of
they
it.
weren't
Each
sure. We had to
message.
wait for our budget to pass to know if we could do it, and it did. So then they already had the routes done, so they stuck in a new one and kind of picked it up. What Will's gonna do this year is just kind of actually divide the town up by
Yeah.
5. and
Start over.
And it will
Yeah,
be,
yeah,
it's
which is
smoother
good.
that way.
Yeah.
So it should even get better, although people have a different route and be,
Yeah.
but
Well, and
but
every
after a couple
year-
weeks, they'll be okay.
Every year since kindergarten, every kindergartner is picked up and dropped off
Yeah,
by law, right?
yeah.
Then
Yeah, and
every
they're
year-
dropped off at their house.
Right, so every year the route has
Has to change.
It has to be thrown up in the air a little bit, so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's great. I
Yeah.
think-
So I think
Roselle
it's
is
made a
doing better
difference.
this year. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was really Roselle, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Keitha, you know.
Last year was not fun, was it? And kids are missing instruction time.
Well,
And now
that's it,
they're
yeah.
not. So that is worth the 70.
Well, and they were supposed to
Yeah.
get out, you know, and the last bus would leave like 3:10, 3:50, and the last bus last year was probably 4:45.
Yeah, yeah. it was
I mean,
crazy.
you know, that's too, you know, they sitting there for an extra half hour, it just, so we had to do it. But, you know.
We could do some
Lot of
ELL
money.
teaching.
Hmm?
We could do some ELL teaching while we wait.
True.
Additional instructions.
Put that in.
Add some instruction time.
So that's
Always
athletics, the
solutions.
agricultural, agricultural transportation's in there too. Next page is athletics.
Oh, is that your $100 day?
Yes.
Yeah,
Nice.
for 2 ladies.
They're going in a limo.
Yeah, right.
Don't they wish?
Probably cheaper. So this is athletics. The 35,000 you see in the school contribution is user fees. And it went up, the coaches went up because we negotiated a new contract with them, but also added, after the 3rd year of JV, we added a volleyball in the fall. So that's extra.
So the 35,000 represent about what, $100 about half the kids pay? Is that what it is? That
Yeah, 350.
participate
Close to that, a little bit more.
is
Around there.
$100.
It's we have $100 flat fee. So if you pay $100, you can play 1, 2, or 3 seasons. Some schools do it per sport. Honestly, I know, Sarah, did you looked at something at other towns, and we're the lowest around. So, I mean, that's always something, especially since we did have an increase. And I know people don't, and I don't believe that, I don't like that people have to pay for public education, but that's always something. We are the lowest around with 100 flat. Do you go to 150? Do you go to 200? Do you do it per sport? I mean, that's something that you might want to discuss. Because if we, you know, got another 35,000 through user fees, then that's $35,000 we could come down on. So I mean, it's something that you might want to think about. That's up to you. You know, it's never popular, but like I said, we're the low. We were the lowest around.
Way low. Yeah.
And I remember, and it's a $100 flat fee. If you go back to the way dark ages when I was teaching and coaching, which seems like yesterday, but was a zillion years ago, West Bridgewater was actually, it was in the early 90s when we were going through a recession at that time, and they were one of the first districts around to even put in a user fee, and it was $125 per sport.
And we've gone down?
It was $25 when I started.
Yeah.
Only time,
Well,
only time
over
anything's
time,
ever gone down.
when the economy got better, West Bridgewater got rid of it, and then we ended up putting it back in. But I mean, in the 90s, it was $125 per sport. So imagine when you think of that was high for that.
Yeah, that was high.
So I mean, that's something that I mean, I'd love it to be zero because it's part of the whole school experience. But so that's something that you might.
Is it only
think
charged to athletics students, or does the band students pay anything? No,
this is just an athletic fee.
Just an athletic fee.
That was another thing that, it might have been before you were on the board, Bill, but, you know, should we just charge a student activity fee, so then everyone, whether you're a drama or a band or athletic, gets charged? I mean, and those discussions have happened at different times. And I think if you were gonna look into something like that, then it would be good for us to look and see which other districts do something like that before. Because what's fair, what isn't, I don't know. And a lot in a small school, I think, Mark, you've said this before, a lot of those athletes then are on something else. So you don't want to do it and say, well, if you're on the band and this and this and this, because then you're getting the same parents 6 times. And if they have 3 kids, you know, that's a lot. So it's really just taxing the parents again.
Right.
But that's something if you want to think about it before we finalize our budget. Next we have maintenance or custodial services, and you can see that the one increase here that you see, it's significant, is the supplies. And the reason for that is because we were still getting used to this school, but you're going to see this on this page and the next page. This is year 3, and most of the warranties for things that we have in our systems and the infrastructure are 3-year warranties. So we are replacing things, the warranty's gone, so you have to, you know, if you have to add a part to something, or the units, the rooftop units
There are
that
so many
filter,
filters.
and you need to change the filters and stuff, so those things
And they're not
cost money. So we're trying to get a handle on it, but it's hard because they were under warranty, so this is our best guess of the supplies that will go up. And we're a bigger school than, you know, we went from 117 square foot school to 145 square foot school, so.
But we're asking for less than what we actually paid this year? Or last year?
Yeah, FY17 we did do 84,000. But do you remember we were having issues with the units and
Yes.
things? The filters were kind of getting sucked in and whatnot. So we did have to, I think, spend a little extra as we learned
Put
the
a filter in
systems.
that lasted a day.
Was this before or after the lightning?
Oh.
That
It
was
was all
before,
long- it was all
right?
long
That was
before that.
Four.
Yeah.
Hey, all I'm gonna say is,
I
thank
know.
God everyone listened to me and put that lightning protection
Hey,
in.
That's
hey,
right.
hey,
And Jim.
A very sound
You weren't
financial
alone in
move.
that park. That was a battle.
Who knew?
Just for the, I should probably just explain for the public that doesn't know what we're talking about, because it'll be like
No.
lightning. When we were building the new school and we had 28 people on our school building committee, one of the things when we were trying to value engineer our price down before we went to the town, came up lightning protection in the building. And we went back and forth, and one of the questions was, well, is there lightning protection in the old building? And everyone said no. It's like, well, it's been there for 60 years, and it's never been struck by lightning, so why do we have to put lightning protection in? And I think it was to the tune of like $50,000 or
Yeah,
it really wasn't that
$75,000. And it was a battle.
Yeah.
If you were at that meeting, it went back and forth, back and forth. Long story short, we put the lightning protection in. Last summer, we got struck by lightning.
Right.
And it worked the way it was supposed to, but I cannot believe
Can you imagine what would happen?
that
Oh my
60
God.
years
That's
went
what I
by and we
mean.
didn't get struck. Like, it would have decimated every system. So,
Then we would have really been. in
lesson to anyone building a building, put your lightning protection
Best
in.
$50,000 spent.
trouble. So can I just ask, so for the grounds maintenance,
Yeah.
It's grounds and maintenance. I don't just think that it's maintaining just the grounds.
says represents a stipend for the forestry supervisor.
Okay.
To oversee?
Yes, no, and that is,
Actually, yes, it did.
Yeah.
However, with
Went
the
up.
new, we just didn't erase that. So
Oh.
Chris used to get a stipend to oversee the school grounds because they took care of our school grounds first. We didn't take care of it ourselves. We paid for a stipend to him and .5 FTE for someone from the forestry, a worker. However, with the new reorganization of, now we're a DPW, highway and forestry went together. I talked to our town administrator and he said, no, we're just gonna, he will not oversee that anymore. It's still part of the DPW, but we don't pay that stipend anymore. And we do still pay for a .5 FTE, but they're actually from the DPW. So we just have to change how that's written.
Yep.
So we did take that stipend out.
So why did it go up though? I don't. So the actual's 96,477 and then we're looking for the 124,79?
yeah, I mean, that was 2 years ago. So raises have gone into our maintenance department, as we already have. So this is actually, if you go.
They're
forward
also
2
our
years.
own, we have 2 people on our
Yes.
maintenance staff also.
Oh, in addition to the custodians?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're actual maintenance guys where we have a licensed electrician and then our 2 other guys that can pretty much do anything.
Oh, okay. I
Yes.
was thinking.
And,
that it
and
was-
honestly, they
I'm
save us
sorry.
a ton
Oh,
of
no, no, I'm
money because
sure.
they can do
it's all-
anything.
Especially with that recent episode with the telephone pole
Oh, that
or
was
whatever
fun.
that was.
Oh, thank God, the
But-
2 of them.
Right?
They
No,
were
I
here
thought.
all weekend.
24/7,
I thought it
and
was
we would have been
custodians.
out
Oh,
of school
I'm
for a
sorry.
week, and we were back in school with only 1 day off, and
Okay.
every wire came pulled out of the Spring Street School.
So these are not,
yeah.
so
we'll
now
change
it's
the
a
description?
2.0?
Yeah, we'll change the description on that.
Yeah,
Is it-
there it says grounds and maintenance. But
Is it a 2.5 or is it a 2?
we have 2 here, and then the .5 is the forestry.
Okay. For that one employee for the forestry, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
cool. Heating. It's the same,
idea.
just based on,
Some days.
Sarah bases it on the prior year's billing and trends, and looks at it from there and feels that we can do the same. That's it, I mean, you just have to look at what you think I mean, if heat goes way up, then, you know, you could be in trouble, but, I mean, it's like any of us that have to estimate for that. But this was a pretty safe bet for next year.
Definitely.
And we have utilities.
Which I didn't go up on. The electricity is going up, but over the past couple of years, it seems to be pretty good at the high school. But I think for the upcoming year, it is going to be the 200.
Now, it did go up from the FY17 actual. If you realize that FY17 actual was the first year we were in the new school. No, it was the second year we were in the new.
But I budgeted going into it.
Right.
So you haven't seen a full year yet.
Right.
Right. So, but now we see that with the technology we have, with the bigger building again, and the electricity in general has gone up. That's why it is, I mean, it's no different from this year's operating,
No.
but that's one of the reasons it went up. So we think we'll be okay with keeping those level. This is maintenance of grounds, which is the sewage, we used to have stuff in the chemicals and supplies, but then we got the new septic system, and we don't have to do that. The waste removal has gone up, and that doesn't seem like a lot dollar-wise, but 14% is a lot. That's the company that we use. Sarah's currently looking into other companies to see if we can go out to bid and maybe get something different. We've actually talked to David Gagney to see who the town uses, and if we can jump on that, or even get our own contract with them. If they're already in the town and they're doing the waste removal from here, then we should be able to get a better deal. So he gave us the information for that, and we'll look in. So that could go down if we can, you know, go out to bid for that. Maintenance of buildings. There's an increase in most of the high school lines for this, and this goes back to the 3-year warranty. And it's tough to anticipate, but you don't want to be caught short, because what if something does break? Maybe it won't, but what if it does? So we have to be a little cautious and go up. And Sarah really based it on, okay, what repairs had to be done, or what things had to be done, even though they were under warranty, how much would that have cost, and that's how she forecasted what we need for the future. And the other one, you can see the Howard Services, FY18 operating 7,000. We're actually putting it for 16. We need to redo the gym floor at the Howard School.
And the roof?
Not the roof.
Well, the
Both,
roof,
right? Separate.
We're gonna
the
do
roof is
MSBA.
different. The roof, we had the selectmen and you sign something for the MSBA.
Yeah.
No, just the roof in the gym. The other roof is done. It's the last roof we have in the district that has to get done. But when the Howard School was gutted, the gym was not done, and the roof was not done, therefore. But the gym roof needs it both inside and out. So we just sent in a statement of interest to the MSBA to see if we can get some funding from them to do the roof. So I talked to David Gagney and I said, if we can get that, is that something then we could maybe put through the capital committee? And, you know, so if it's $100,000 to do the gym roof and we could get 50 of it from the state, could we then put that through capital? And so we'll go to capital for the roof. If we don't get MSBA,
We'll still go to capital.
we'll go to capital. We'll see what the capital committee says. They might say, yeah, go for the whole thing, or they might say, why don't you wait and see if you can get, like, what are the chances you'll get it next year? I mean, that really comes down to the capital. What we do is, when we have capital items, we'll put it in to the capital committee, and they say yes, no, yes, no. And they're just a recommendation board to the selectmen, and the selectmen decide. But if we can get, I mean, we got half of the Roselle roof, we got half of the Spring Street roof. If we get half of this gym roof, I mean, $50,000, that would be a big help. So that's why it's not in the budget, because we want to go through capital and do it that way, because it's a big expenditure. But the gym floor needs to be done, and that's why we put it in here.
Sorry.
Again, that was the only thing, and if you were around here at the time, and the Howard School completely, when they renovated it, was gutted. I mean, you could see from one side to the other, they completely gutted it. So but I don't know, that was years ago, I don't know why they didn't do the gym at the time, so.
And under services, there's things like windows, locksmiths, fire alarms. Does this include, or is there money in here included in some of the things that the Safe School asked for? You know, we were asking for some like doors being fixed and locks and stuff like that.
Yeah, this is, they're definitely
There's
in
monies
there.
in there.
Because every year it varies. I mean, you can see some years you spend 57,000, some years it's 100,000.
Administrators walk through different buildings, and I walk through at like Spring Street and kind of write down like, you know what, we need to change this lock, or this doesn't, you know, and we do it every year, a couple times a year, so we do get that safety information, and then we fix it. We've done a lot of upgrades in safety and security things since we started that Alice training with police, but we've worked pretty closely with the police and fire department on those things.
Is that why some of these numbers might look a little higher than what we're asking for, things that were
Yes.
done in 17?
And we're also, you know, one of the things on some of the rooms, you know, we had to, was it at the Howard School with the locks on the outside, and then we ended up changing them, you know, and it's weird, but just, you know, based on what happened in Florida, one of the things they were talking about is they had to actually go out in the hall and, you know, I think we're pretty much ahead of that. Our police department walking through with us, the Howard School said they should really be on the inside, so we changed the lock so that they could lock them from the inside and stuff. So it's just little things like that. They come up every year, and sometimes you don't know, but that's why we do these
Right.
lockdown drills, so that we can anticipate what things we can do to make it safer. I'm getting there. Service contracts. Again, for some of them, with the end of 3 years.
And the costs go up every year too.
And the costs go up. And we have some new contracts that we have to negotiate, because we might have had service contracts that were 3-year contracts.
Yeah. And like fire alarms, they make you, I think, test them 4 times a year now, stuff like that. And actually, that list that was handed out to you does list all of our service contracts, so you can.
This is insurance, and Sarah can explain this better than I can.
This is basically general liability insurance that is done through the town, and all I know is that they post the bills to our account line, and I don't really get too involved with the town's insurance, but to date, so far, we've already spent $27,000 on the insurance, and again, this all comes right from the town administrator's office. So we are going out to bid, I believe, this summer, well, for the summer, looking at different insurance policies. Hopefully, maybe we can save some money, but as of right now, we're spending about $30,000 a year on it, so it needs to be increased.
And I know that there's several companies that the town is looking at, and I will say, I think David's very good at negotiating, and I know he wants to get a good deal for the town, so it's going to be a good process, I think.
I think so.
And my gut is that it will go down a little bit, but we'll see. No new equipment, no replacement of equipment. Okay. Tuition for
Norfolk Aggie.
Norfolk, the agricultural school. So right now, knock on wood, we have the 2 kids that are going. It's early. We could still get someone that applies. I will know, because they have to come to my office and I have to sign off that that we don't have the program, or that Southeastern doesn't have the program. So.
Does that happen in the next couple weeks while they're doing their course selection?
I've gotten one as late as June before.
So
So,
it doesn't have to be done this week.
no. So I'm hoping that it's the 2 and that's it.
So the other, just back for 1 second, so the other kind of moving target would be the Independence Academies in this too? In the
Yes,
description?
there is
So
none
Right
budgeted.
now.
Yeah. That's a
So,
tough one. We
again-
did, yeah. Well, and it's, you know, we don't know for sure. I mean, it's hard to budget for Independence Academy
course.
because we hope that we don't need anyone that has to go to Independence Academy.
Right, but we
But
don't know.
we did a year ago,
Keep your fingers crossed,
Always.
a year ago,
or your toes,
Keep
whichever
the
you prefer.
education going.
and the bottom line is, I mean, the state pays part of that tuition, but if a kid is, you know, drug addicted,
Right,
then they deserve to
absolutely.
go to a school that can also help them therapeutically, try to, you know, be in a sober environment and all that before they come back. And hopefully the goal is, if they're young enough to come back, but it's very, you know, there's a lot of research that shows that when a kid's in school and they get drug addicted, or even alcohol or drug addicted, and they go to rehab and they come back to the regular environment, it's really easy to get right back into it. So having a school, and we're lucky because it's right next door in Brockton, having a school that will say, well, all right, the intermediate step is don't go back to your school, get your education here for a while, and when you're ready and you can handle it, then you can go back. Now, you know, it costs us $10,000 a kid to send them there, but I have a hard time if a kid needs that saying, oh no, we don't have money for you to go there.
But that's
I mean, if you
kind
can
of-
save one kid
course.
from, you know, being addicted, then
But
I
that's what
do
mean.
think there's going to stop being more state money for that because of the opioid
Yeah.
crisis and because
Right.
the governor is putting more of an eye on it. So I do believe eventually there'll be more state money for that. Right now, it's about $20,000. The state pays 10. We pay 10.
Okay.
But I have a feeling they're going to start putting more money into it. And right now, parents are responsible for the transportation. Again, it's fine for us because we're right next door, so it's not far.
Sure.
But, I mean, if you're in Plymouth and that's the closest one there is to you, which it is on the South Shore, that's kind of hard maybe to get your kid there. So they're looking to fund transportation is the next thing that they're trying to do.
Okay.
But it's a great program. I mean, you've
Of
seen
course
Ryan
it is.
when he
Oh,
comes and he
it's-
presents on our anti-drug nights, and he's
Yeah.
just great.
He's a great speaker, he's a motivator, he's definitely someone that needs to be supported.
Yeah, and we do a lot with him.
But this is one of those things where, you know, the state says, well, plan for it. You can't plan for it. You don't want to.
That's why I was saying
It's like,
a moving
yeah,
target.
it's a moving target. It's a.
So,
No, you can't plan
keep your
for
fingers
it.
crossed,
No.
as Mr. Wolfen said.
Next is the Special Education Administration. This is the director, the secretaries, and expenses. And you can see that there was no FY17 because that was the assistant superintendent. We went to a director of student services, which is a little bit different.
Working out
and-
much better.
Yeah. Delete that from the record. So that's just why that's different. Teaching services, special education. Speech pathologist is something you notice that went down. We had a retirement of a long-time speech pathologist, and the person that we replaced her with had less years of experience. So that was a big savings there. Other than that, it's about the same. More teaching services, again, that's contractual. I want to draw your attention to, this is an increase in FTE. You can see that FY18 was 35.6, FY19 is 36.6. That increase in the 1.0 FTE is an instructional assistant that we have to add for next year, and it's per a student's IEP as they go into kindergarten. So that's just in their IEP. So that's where that increase in, so it's still level service. It's just that the service goes up as the kid gets older. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it is an added position. Okay. Psychological services, this is for kids, not me.
No,
That's a separate line item.
So remember I told you that we don't have counselors, but we have psychologists, so we have a Roselle, Howard, high school, different years of service, and psychological testing. That sounds weird when you say it that way, but they're important tests for when kids like neuropsychs and stuff. We're not doing experiments or anything. Okay. Okay, so then we separate out, this is special education transportation. Special education transportation are for the out-of-district placements.
Correct.
And is it for bus 5 too, or is that in the?
Yes,
And
it is
for, and for bus 5?
For the preschool
Tom's
buses.
bus, the preschool bus?
Tom's bus.
Mr. Tom.
I know, but it's just great.
Everyone loves Mr. Tom.
We don't put any names on anything else.
But Tom's bus.
They do love them.
They do love them.
So for all of the kids that we have that are out of district, that 1.2%, that's the transportation. Again, we do a really good job going out to bid, trying to get the lowest possible price, but you have to realize that with some of these kids, they need an aide on the bus. So we have to pay for that. So even though it's a bus company that might come and pick the kid up, we're responsible for paying, oh, this kid needs an aide, we need that. Sometimes you need it, and it's a wheelchair van. Sometimes, so you go out to bid, but there's only so many vendors that actually do special education with the certain things that some of these kids with significant disabilities need. So, you can see that it's very close to the same price as our regular ed.
It is.
Now, our regular ed transportation are those 5 buses that go around town, and for 22 kids, we're about the same price, because they're going out of town, and it's specialized transportation. So,
It's tough,
but we
this
do
is-
go out for the lowest bids. We do go out for the lowest.
Well, and you get what they need, too. That's the other thing. As much as I would say I would love to have someone else pay for it, we understand what the needs are and make sure that they're met, too. So it's important that
Right.
that's the priority.
And you don't want just any Joe Schmo bus company
You're not calling
taking
an
some
Uber.
kids that have like significant needs.
No offense to Uber.
That's, people,
Or Joe
you
Joe Schmo.
specialize in special education transportation for a reason, because they know what they're doing and they're good at
And
it.
there's needs.
And the kids feel safe, and they're safe, and a lot of kids have, with other disabilities, comes along with anxiety and things like that, and they get very close relationships with these bus drivers, and it's safe, and, so
spend time
so
with
it's
them.
important. Acquisition of equipment, and these are the out-of-district placements. You can actually see that the out-of-district placements right now, our sped costs overall might be going up, but the out-of-district tuition is actually decreasing.
Yes, and we're also contributing more through circuit breaker because of the high
Right.
cost that we have on some of these. So we'll actually get more this year.
So we had, because of that one really,
Because it's way over 43,000.
yeah, the one that's way over, and this is the first year we've had it. So we had to put money out this year. Next year, we'll get the circuit breaker money. We still won't get 100% of the circuit breaker money, but we'll get enough that we feel that we can offset it. So it's not really like the cost is, it's just the reimbursement for the next year is. So that's going to help us out. And that's why you see that it's 454,000.
So someday, when this child is 23, we'll actually have as long as, let's say, the population doesn't change again, we could have a circuit breaker year that spikes.
Yes.
And then the following year, we're going to see we need more money because the year before,
Right.
we
Yeah.
had too much Chapter 70 money, or an unbalanced amount of. That'll be interesting.
And at the same time, every day you don't know what's going to happen.
Well, that's
Well,
it.
that's it.
Right.
Yeah, usually,
Fluctuates so
yeah,
much.
usually
Right.
one goes out and then two come in, or,
Yeah, and you know, we're budgeting this on, okay, what do we have that we
Right now,
know
today.
needs to stay, and
Right.
the IEPs that they've been going over, and and all that stuff. Maybe someone could go back. The only ones we would know for sure is if someone aged out, then it's like, okay, but
We don't know who's
we
aging
get
in.
kids that, you know, early intervention comes to us when kids are 3 years old and says, this kid's got severe need. We assess them, we may be able to handle them, they might be severely disabled that we can't. So, again, this is the moving target and the most expensive. And, you know, Corey's doing a great job trying to look at the services and say, are there other things that we can do within our systems, in this school system, so that we can keep kids longer, and can we meet the needs of them as long as we can? And so he has this expertise from where he came from, and he's looking at all the out-of-district placements, and, you know, so we're trying to make it so that the kids get the services they need, but is there something that we can do? Can we start building capacity in-house for some of these kids? You know, the ones that need 365 day, 24/7, and that's
We don't
different.
have the facility.
But there's some that could be, you know, maybe there are some that we could maybe create something here. Might cost us some money at the beginning, but in the long run, we won't be paying the transportation, you know,
Well,
so.
and be best for the student. 'cause
And
it's
for
the least
Exactly.
restrict- That's
Yeah.
the,
Within the national community.
So, I mean, that's the whole thing. We want the least restrictive environment. We can't always provide that because of the disabilities, but if we can try to look at what we have here and do that, it is best for the kid. You know, that's why we also have 2 programs through collaboratives that are in this building, because they could be in a separate building, you know, the Reed's program, they could be in a separate building somewhere, but even though they're in a specialized program, they want to be in a neighborhood school because it's better for the kids. So even though they're in a specialized program, they're in a neighborhood school, and they need that. So that's why we house programs like that.
all right. Any
So,
questions?
So that's the line by line. Oop. I don't have the summary,
Do you have
but,
to read
I know.
members of the audience?
so the bottom line, really, is, again, it's an increase of $350,879 for the operating budget. That retirement is the 218, and when you put that together, that's the 4.7% increase. And so that's what's on the front, that's what we're asking. That's what we're proposing. So I know there's things that you're gonna think about and talk about. This is just a draft. So are there any other specific questions about anything that you have, or anything you want us, the 2 of us, to research or look into before, you know, for the budget? Anything that we left out or didn't?
and of course, you can, not to put you on the spot right now, email us over the next weeks or so.
Could I just make the comment that your initial presentation with the unfunded and the underfunded and all of the mandates was super helpful to try to, I think, give the perspective on this.
Oh, good.
So I'm probably going to follow up with some questions on that, but
Sure.
that was super helpful. So thank you for that. I know that took a lot of time, you know, for you to put together, so thank you.
It does give you a better perspective, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
You
'Cause
can
you
actually
see-
quantify it, you're like, wow.
You
Yeah.
see what we're up against, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
geez, we want to do all these things, but then this comes down, and this comes down, and this comes down, so.
I just had one quick question, though. So with respect to compliance with all of these mandates, I'm sure it's not a, you know, 1-year turnaround for compliance. So is there like a, how do I ask this? Like a delay time for the compliance so that your budget can catch up?
It depends what
Does that
the
make sense?
mandate is.
Okay.
You know, so for curriculum, well, you never have to comply, but your kids aren't gonna
Well,
pass tests, you know,
of
so,
course.
so you know, there's nothing like that. But For things like the bullying regulations and
Right.
that, yes, there were specific dates that you had it. For concussion testing, there were specific dates. For the SBIRT, there's specific dates. So there
you have
are
that
some.
pressure as well.
Yeah.
That you not only have to find the money to do this, but you also have to stay within compliance on the calendar timeline as well.
Right.
So,
So again, it depends on the mandate. But if a lot of them, they give you a year or something like that, but you're not just,
Still
so you
not
have to
enough
find the
time.
money, but
Not much time.
it's not enough time
no.
anyways, but.
Because there's a lot more that comes with it. You know, every time you do, it's like, oh, we can put this in, but we gotta train these teachers, we gotta put this
Right.
person in charge of it, we gotta.
Right, it's so many layers to one mandate, you know, so many, like you said, it's a ripple effect.
And I don't always think, again, I think that they're well-intentioned. But these legislators, if they don't work in schools, if they haven't been around schools, they're well-intentioned, but they don't see the ripple effects of some of these things that come down, that we have to do. And it can be a lot.
Well, you also do a great job of anticipating some of those things that are coming down, like
Yeah.
the one-to-one on the technology and being proactive and getting the grant so that we are in a crunch time. We've been working on that, and you know, it's pretty amazing how quickly we did get one-to-one and how the kids do take tests on their Chromebooks and they'll be ready, which that's what it's all about, but it's never easy. It's not easy at all. All right, any other questions?
No, I'm sorry. Thank you.
All right. Public forum. Members of the audience wishing to address the committee may do so at this time. Audience members are reminded that personnel issues or issues that would violate student confidentiality cannot be addressed during the public forum. Anyone in the public have a question, please? Would you mind coming to the podium and just telling us who you are? So, I think that will get you, even though it looks far away.
Do I need to move it?
I don't think
Can
so.
you hear me?
I think it's fine.
Denise Reyes. Thank you for inviting me. This was very, very informative. Dr. Oakley has done presentations for me before when I was on Finance Committee, and it's a lot of numbers to take in, it really is. I hope to see the final product, but it is a lot to take in. A few questions about school choice. How many students are in the school choice program at the high school?
At the high school, I mean, I know pre-K through, I mean, I know K through 12.
Okay.
234?
234 K through 12.
And are you at full capacity?
We're pretty much at full capacity. I can tell you that we opened again for school choice for September. We go at a space available basis. We look at the grades. I'll look at the March 1st data and see what we can do. What we try to do is if we graduate 15, it would be nice to put 15 in. So a lot of times they're at the transition grade. 9th grade, because we get a number of kids that go to Southeastern Regional, so we can open their spots. 7th grade, because we go from 4 sections in the 6th grade to 5 sections in 7th, so we have space. And kindergarten. Those tend to be the big openings, and if we could get 15 in there, then, because we use the money, so we don't want it to go down. So, I mean, I'll be honest with you, there's a push right now from urban districts around the state that they don't like school choice because you're an urban district, you lose a lot of money because they're coming to the suburbs. Smaller district superintendents are working to fight that, but if that ever happened, it would devastate a district like West Bridgewater. So I actually went on and I ran to be on the executive board of the state association, superintendent association, because that's one of the things that they're looking at, and I really think that it's important for a community like West Bridgewater. We need to keep this. So,
Is there is the per student reimbursement consistent from town to town, or does it vary?
Straight
Nope.
across the board,
straight across the board.
through the
it's-
whole state.
Yeah.
But it's half of your per pupil expenditure, pretty much, well, hours.
So we get roughly $6,000.
We get $5,000. It's a
$5,000.
cap of 5,000.
in revenue.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes that's confusing to people because our per pupil expenditure is 12,000. So I'll take a second and explain that. The most you can get, the formula started back in 1993, and they said you could get up to 75% of your per pupil expenditure with a cap of 5,000. Well, if you go back to 1993, the per pupil expenditures around then were probably 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, so that was good. So now people say, well, it's 12,000, 77 to educate one of our kids. So what does 5,000 get us? I'll tell you what it gets us. We only take kids where there is space available. So for example, if there are 16 kids in a high school class, we already have the teacher, we already have the desk, we already have the books, we already have the heat, we already have, and if I can add 4 at 5,000 a pop, that's extra revenue.
So it's sort of like these students have a fixed cost, variable cost, and the incoming school choice, there's no variable cost, they're just helping to cover that student fixed cost.
Yep.
Exactly.
Accounting 101 almost.
Exactly.
Thank
So it is, and it's important to explain that to people because
Right.
they don't see that, and it's good money. It helps us because we would never do it if it was going to take away from what our kids had. That wasn't the point of it. It was to help our kids.
I think the only other question, actually there were two. The school psychologists, the cost for that, is any of that insurance reimbursable?
No, but we do Medicaid reporting, and the town does receive some money, which goes right into the general fund. I'm trying to remember what we got last year, maybe like 30,000 went back, but it goes to the general fund, it doesn't come to the school.
It doesn't go into the school budget. We do the reporting and the data for it. It goes into the general fund for the town.
Okay, but you can't bill like Blue Cross Blue Shield or, no,
No.
too bad.
Yeah. That would be
I was just
good.
trying to think out of the box.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure you've already thought of all these things, so it's nothing new. The transportation for the homeless children, is there a cap at which point after a year or 2 years that you no longer provide those services, or is it until until the child graduates?
I don't know the actual.
It's until they're not homeless anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
It's I'll be honest with you.
It's very big.
We check it every year and say, okay, and you say they're doubling up and they're living with an aunt somewhere or whatever, and the family's there, and after a while we have to look at it and say, now is this a permanent home or is it still doubling up? It's very hard because the law is on the side of the homeless child. So we do have a homeless liaison in our district that works on that, and after he says, is this really a permanent address, and so on, and we have a liaison at the state that helps us with these decisions. So there isn't a fixed time. We have to just continue to follow up on it.
Okay. I think it was, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a large number. I think it was $25,000.
Yep.
So like I said, it wasn't a large number. I was just curious at what
But it
point.
can, it can build up, and like we said, we just got someone today, and all of a sudden it's
Right.
like, oh, okay, that's $100 a day. That's a lot of money.
Yep.
The last thing I was going to ask about is that mystery formula they use.
The Chapter 70.
Yeah, for the Chapter 70. What can anyone, just residents, do to help you, support you in trying to get the state to make 1 and 1 equal 2 and not 10?
Contact your senator.
Contact your senators and your reps,
Okay.
because they're the ones that, I'll tell you that the Mass Association of School Superintendents have lobbyists that are trying to, and it's on the forefront. They're trying to change the formula. There's groups that they're working with at the State House. There's the State House Education Committee that has both House and Senate people on it. They're working to try to figure it out, change it, and it's going to be a legislative change. So it's contact your senators and your reps and stay in their area and say, you got to look at Chapter 70. And look at it in perspective of West Bridgewater, because and I talked to Walter Timothy about it, and I said, look how low we are compared to all the other towns that he represents.
Yeah, but I remember us talking about this 7 years ago.
It happened in 1993. That's how long it's
Okay,
been.
so-
And there's been lawsuits. I mean, there's was it McDuffie from Brockton that did the big lawsuit and sued the state over Chapter 70, and it still didn't change. So,
So maybe if I plaster this all over Facebook with the senator's home phone number, not that I would do that. Thank you.
I don't
Thank you for
know,
your
but
time.
you're welcome.
Maybe we should give the slide that you had showing the visual graph, the bar graph, to Mr. Timmelty. See what he can do with that over at the State
Yeah, I
House.
actually just talked to him the other day, because he actually
You
called
know.
and said, so what are your main things that you want me to fight for and talk
Yeah.
about this season? So,
Yeah.
I did talk to him.
I know you did, but you can
Oh, I
send
could
him the
easily
bar
send him
graph.
that, yeah. Well, because
I
that
mean, it's
visual
just-
shows you,
It's,
How-
it's very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
anyone else?
All right. Our next meeting is Monday, March 12th at 6:30, our regular school committee meeting right here in the Learning Commons, of which we'll be voting on the budget that we're going to put forward to be reviewed and then voted on by the town eventually. So it gets voted on a couple different times. Can I entertain a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Great,
Aye.
thank you guys. Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Oakley.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.